Choices, choices, choices. An indie comedy thriller called So Torn is hitting theaters, and it's a bit like a twisted version of Groundhog Day. So, is it worth getting wrapped up in? Get it? So, please don't unsubscribe. A seamstress gets tangled in her own thread after stealing a briefcase from a drug deal gone bad. In an escalating game of cat and mouse, her different choices lead to drastically different outcomes along the way. So this is a limited cast featuring Eve Connolly, Calum Worthy, John Lynch, Callan, Ron Cook, Thomas Douglas, and Caroline Goodall. And while the setting is undefined, it looks to take place in Switzerland, with these beautiful green valleys and stunningly sharp snow-capped mountains that surround the valleys. And it's odd that the town that we see is completely empty. The streets make the town feel abandoned, with no people out and about, not even cars occasionally driving by. But despite this, the centralized location allows for efficient setups, especially as we watch our main character Barbara run through her different scenarios. Now, the story follows a format that creates a situation where Barbara, a mobile seamstress, is driving back from a job when she encounters two men who are injured on a road with some guns and a briefcase between them. And this is where Barbara's choices come into play. She can stop and intervene, call the police, or just continue driving, and each leads to different outcomes, some of which are very unfortunate. Now, the sparse nature of the production certainly enhances the indie feel, but that's not a detractor from the enjoyment or the storytelling. I mean, there's not much in here to create distractions from the plot, other than some portions that just kind of drag. To incorporate the sewing aspect into the story in a large way, Barbara creates intricate Rube Goldberg mousetrap-style setups with needles and thread, sometimes to entrap something, other times to maneuver items around locations, and sometimes even to just assist in escape. Now, I don't know about you, but all of the thread I've used to attach buttons or sew up seams, it's been thin. And even when using embroidery thread to create friendship bracelets, the tensile strength isn't enough to do all of the things that we see in this movie. If you're willing to overlook this implausibility, then the pulley systems Barbara creates are enjoyable and effective. If not, they are completely unbelievable and will break all of the tension the story attempts to build. I put aside my disbelief for the benefit of the storytelling, and I just went with it. Even though there is one specific time that her device, it is just utterly fantastical and pure delusion. Eve Connolly is enigmatic and introverted, creating this persona where the character folds in on herself, using a combination of grief, despair, some loneliness, and restlessness to make Barbara believably odd. She's also standoffish and then quiet, and at times it's difficult to determine if she's unhinged or just sad. Either way, though, her demeanor works to create a slightly unsettling atmosphere where the uncertainty of her mental status works in the story's favor to build unpredictable intrigue. Now, during the 100-minute runtime, we watched 3 different scenarios play out. And while each of them creates their own excitement and are different enough to all be curious, the pacing becomes uneven and certainly drags in spots. Now, some of that is just simply because we see some repetitive moments, but mainly the slowness comes from the mundane building of her traps. It's fine to watch Barbara guide the thread through a few different locations or items just to illustrate her building this contraption. But to see it all play out, angle by angle, that becomes dull viewing. Especially because the camera is typically very close to all of her movements, so the larger perspective is lost. Now, I love me some Tom and Jerry or Wile E. Coyote apparatuses, but if we're watching them build the things piece by piece, step by step, no thanks. Show me the beginning, show me the end, and then let's get on to the execution of the actual device. The cast is a lot of fun because they're all quirky in their own respects. Calum Worthy is mousy and timid, this browbeaten young man who doesn't have many lines of dialogue, but he emotes perfectly, showcasing someone enveloped with fear that's also lined with hope. I mean, I would have loved more dialogue from him, especially because I know he can bring unsettling dialogue delivery that can create a confusing mixture of sketchiness and endearment. When he was in The Act with Joey King, that performance was uncomfortable and twisted, and I think his character in this gave off a mild form of that vibe, in addition to just being somebody who just wants to belong. John Lynch is a spectacular baddie, full of menace and a threatening aura. Now, there is a moment when his villain monologue goes on for too long, but that's a fault of the writing, not the acting. He's cruel and unrelenting, but unfortunately, the story also makes him pretty one-dimensional. Even when we see him in a fatherly role, he's just as callous and disdainful, never quite breaking out of the stereotypical gangster persona. And then there's Kay Callan. She is the town's sheriff, justice of the peace, and notary. And she is a riot because despite being quite elderly, she's spry and feisty. And her matter-of-factness just made me chuckle because she comes across as wildly unaware, but still more than capable of holding her own. She's also biting and sarcastic when it's called for, and that makes her even more endearing because she calls out the crap when it's necessary. So despite some slowness and uneven pacing during Barbara's choices, this is a cute and strange film, drawing on loneliness to create the necessary emotional landscape for a reclusive young woman to play out precarious scenarios in the hopes of changing her circumstances. Eve Connolly I thought was charming and sympathetic, quirky and resourceful, drawing us in with her quiet demeanor and then shocking us by her devious schemes and a wonderfully bizarre interpretive dance. While the film isn't full of high-speed action, it does deliver sideways humor and some intense moments that lead to overall enjoyment. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and a lot of violence. I give So Torn 3 out of 5 couches. Alright, this was fun and odd, and if you enjoy these types of indie movies, give it a go. So are there any smaller budget or lesser known films that you enjoy? One of my favorites is The Last Supper from 1995. Let me know yours, though, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.